Look at the last text message you sent when you tried to say no. Did you actually say no? Or did you write a full paragraph explaining why you were not available, apologizing for having a boundary, and carefully arranging every word so the other person would not feel uncomfortable? Be honest. You did not send a boundary. You sent a request for permission. You thought you were being polite. You thought you were being mature, considerate, and respectful. But in the architecture of human behavior, endless explanation is rarely processed as kindness. It is processed as access. It tells people that your time, your energy, and your respect are cheap to reach. This is the subservience reflex. It is the unconscious habit of lowering your own value to reduce someone else's discomfort. You over-explain. You volunteer too early. You defend yourself too quickly. And every time you do it, you teach the room that your boundaries are not walls. They are invitations to negotiate. Today, we are going to expose the 3 everyday behaviors that quietly leak your status. The moment after you say no, the moment before you volunteer, and the moment someone tries to provoke your ego. By the end of this briefing, you will understand how to hold the pause, decline without apology, and process disrespect without reacting like someone begging to be approved. Because the greatest leak of power does not happen when you set a boundary. It happens immediately after, in the dead air, in the silence, in the few seconds where your nervous system panics and tries to make you surrender just to make the room comfortable again. That is where your leverage disappears, and that is where the first trap begins. Why does a simple 5-second silence feel like a physical threat to an otherwise capable adult? Let us bypass generic communication advice and look directly at what happens inside your body during an unresolved pause. Picture a specific scene. You are sitting across from a client or a manager, and you just stated your final requirement, your price, your timeline, your refusal to work the weekend. Or you are standing in your kitchen, telling a demanding relative that you will not be taking on their logistical responsibilities this year. You state your position clearly. You deliver the boundary. And then, absolutely nothing happens. They do not argue. They do not agree. They do not yell. They simply look at you. The air goes dead quiet. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. If you suffer from the subservience reflex, your body begins to react before your mind can explain why. Pressure builds in your chest. The room feels heavier. Your heart rate rises. Your nervous system begins treating silence like danger. But there is no predator in the room. There is only dead air. So why does your body panic? Because somewhere along the way, you were trained to read silence as disapproval. A quiet room feels like danger because your nervous system learned that someone else's discomfort was your responsibility. You were taught that a smooth, flowing conversation means peace, and that silence means someone is angry, disappointed, or preparing to punish you. So when the conversation stops, your old programming activates. You believe it is your job to repair the room, to soften the moment, to make everyone comfortable again. Opportunists and skilled negotiators understand this vulnerability perfectly. They do not need to raise their voice to dominate you. They simply manufacture a specific environment we call the manipulation void. The manipulation void is the deliberate use of silence to make your anxiety negotiate against your interests. Its rule is simple. The first person who opens their mouth to relieve the tension is the one who surrenders the leverage. When you sit in that manufactured silence, the friction becomes unbearable. You fear being seen as unreasonable, arrogant, or difficult. So, you crack. You smile a tight, nervous, appeasing smile. You break the silence to save them from the awkwardness. You say, "If the budget is tight, I could probably lower it a bit." Or, "Maybe I can just drop by for an hour." In that exact moment, you just paid the concession tax. You did not just lose a few dollars or a few hours. You revealed your structural baseline. You proved that your boundary was not a wall. It was an opening offer. This leak appears in three arenas. The first is workplace and financial negotiation. When you state a salary expectation, a project timeline, or a refusal to work a weekend, and the manager responds with a cold, evaluating stare, your urge to backtrack can destroy your professional baseline. If you fill their silence with justification, you signal that your requirement is flexible under pressure. You teach them that your first answer is not your real answer. It is merely the answer before discomfort begins. The second arena is interpersonal dynamics. The manipulation void is a favorite weapon of guilt-tripping relatives, passive-aggressive partners, and people who have grown used to your compliance. When you finally say no, they may deploy the silent treatment, a heavy, punishing void designed to make you feel like the villain. If you rush to apologize, explain, or offer a compromise just to restore peace, you train them to ignore your words and apply pressure to your nervous system instead. They do not have to respect the boundary. They only have to wait for you to abandon it. The third arena is the digital void. The subservience reflex does not only happen face-to-face, it happens on your phone. You send a text establishing a boundary. "I won't be able to make it tonight." The recipient reads it, but does not reply. The read receipt sits there. 1 hour passes. 3 hours pass. The silence starts working on you. Your mind invents stories. Are they angry? Offended? Talking about you? So you send the double text. "Just really swamped with work. Sorry again. Hope it goes well." You just gave them the remote control to your anxiety. You proved that even their digital absence is enough to make you perform for approval. To close this leak, you need two things: strategic awareness and emotional control. You must understand that another person's silence is an outside event. It is neutral. Your judgment is what labels it awkward, threatening, or unbearable. The silence itself has no power until you volunteer your fear into it. Your correction is a behavioral protocol we call the freeze discipline. The freeze discipline is the weaponization of the pause. You are retraining your nervous system to experience social tension not as a threat, but as information. Here is the field manual. First, lock in your operational language. Stop ending boundaries with open-ended questions. Stop trailing into apology. Use clean, complete sentences. "That does not work for me. My price is firm. I will not be available for that. I cannot accommodate that request." Second, control the physical mechanics. State the sentence. Put a hard period at the end of it. Then close your mouth. Do not part your lips as if you are waiting to rescue them from the silence. Third, stabilize your body. When the void opens, your heart rate may rise. Take a slow, invisible breath through your nose. Settle back into your chair. Claim your physical space. Do not fidget. Do not reach for your phone. Do not look down at the floor like a defendant, waiting for a verdict. Finally, deploy relaxed eye contact. If direct eye contact feels too intense, look at the bridge of their nose. It registers as eye contact without overwhelming your nervous system. Then let the silence do its work. Untrained people shatter the void because they mistake tension for danger. Sovereign operators hold the void because they understand tension is simply information. If the silence stretches to 10 seconds, let it stretch to 10 seconds. If they look at you waiting for an explanation, remain calm. Your no is a complete sentence, not the beginning of a negotiation. When you master the freeze discipline, you prove that you are no longer controlled by the cheapest manipulation tactic in human communication. You held the silence. You survived the void. You stopped negotiating against yourself. But silence is only the first battlefield. The deeper leak happens before anyone pressures you at all, when your own anxiety volunteers you into a burden that was never yours. Why do you consistently volunteer your time, your energy, and your mental bandwidth to solve problems for people who would never cross the street to do the same for you? Think about the group chat on a Friday evening, or a vague email chain at work where a minor crisis is dropped onto the team. The issue is not assigned to you. No one pointed at you. No one specifically asked you to handle it. But before anyone else responds, the anxiety begins to rise in your chest, and your fingers are already moving. You type that you can take care of it. You tell them not to worry. You say you will step in and fix it. Then look closely at what happens afterward. You sacrifice your evening. You finish the task. You carry the burden. And what do you receive? A hollow thank you. A quick emoji. A casual line that says, "Appreciate it." Then everyone moves on. You feel used. You feel tired. You feel quietly resentful. You complain in your own mind that no one appreciates your reliability, that everyone takes advantage of your good nature, that you are always the one who has to carry the weight. But here is the surgical truth. They did not force you. You volunteered. You believe you are being a reliable team player. You think your willingness to carry the burden makes you valuable. But in reality, you are executing the pacification reflex. You are not stepping up from power. You are stepping up from anxiety. Deep down, you are terrified of the tension that appears when no one takes responsibility. You are afraid that if you do not volunteer, the project will fail, the group will become uncomfortable, someone will be disappointed, or worse, you will be silently judged as selfish. Somewhere along the way, you learn to confuse your usefulness with your worth. You began to believe that if you are not solving, fixing, helping, carrying, smoothing, or absorbing, then you have no right to take up space. So you trade your bandwidth for temporary social peace. Every time you use your own labor to pacify a situation that was not yours to carry, you sign what we call the concession contract. A concession contract is the invisible agreement you create when you repeatedly solve other people's discomfort at your own expense. You teach the people around you that your time is the cheapest available resource. You teach them that when pressure appears, you will absorb it. When confusion appears, you will organize it. When responsibility becomes uncomfortable, you will quietly pick it up before anyone has to ask. At first, they may appreciate it. The first time you step in, you are helpful. The second time, you are reliable. The third time, it becomes your role. And when you finally refuse because you are exhausted, overwhelmed, or simply no longer willing to abandon yourself, they act confused. They act disappointed. They may even treat you like the villain. Not because you did something wrong, but because you disrupted the contract you trained them to expect. This is where the proximity discount begins. In human behavior, extreme accessibility destroys perceived value. Diamonds are expensive because they are scarce and difficult to extract. Tap water is cheap because it flows the moment someone turns the handle. When your energy, attention, and problem-solving ability are available to anyone who complains loudly enough, your value begins to collapse in their mind. Not because you lack value, but because you priced yourself like a utility, always available, always on demand, always ready to flow. Why would anyone treat your boundaries as serious if you are the first person to abandon them? This leak appears in 3 specific arenas. The first is the workplace. You are the one who stays late. You take the extra project. You cover for the incompetent colleague. You answer messages after hours. You assume this will make leadership see you as indispensable. But often, the opposite happens. The person who does their core job well and guards their time is seen as focused, serious, and expensive to access. You, on the other hand, become the workhorse, useful, dependable, and dangerously easy to exploit. Management often does not promote the workhorse. They depend on that person exactly where they are, because moving them would mean losing the free utility they provide. You think you are proving leadership potential, but if you are not careful, you are simply proving how much pressure you can absorb without requiring anything in return. The second arena is interpersonal life. In your relationships and family dynamics, you may become the emotional sponge. When a partner, parent, sibling, or friend is in a bad mood, you immediately assume it is your job to fix the atmosphere. You start offering solutions. You run errands. You change your plans. You soften your language. You absorb their tension into your own nervous system just so the room can feel normal again. But every time you regulate another adult's emotions for them, you train them to outsource their discomfort to you. They do not have to process their frustration because you will rush in and manage it. They do not have to sit with disappointment because you will offer a concession. They do not have to respect your capacity because you keep pretending you have more capacity than you actually do. The third arena is social life. You are the friend who always drives, the one who organizes the plans, the one who quietly covers the missing money when the bill comes up short, the one who adjusts, accommodates, and absorbs the logistical mess so everyone else can enjoy themselves. You think this buys loyalty, but transactional generosity does not create respect. It usually creates dependency. People do not value what they can access without effort. They consume it. This is why generosity must be understood correctly. Generosity is power when it comes from choice. It is a liability when it comes from fear. A person who gives because they freely choose to give is strong. A person who gives because they are terrified of disappointing others is not being generous. They are paying emotional ransom. To break the concession contract, you must master a behavioral correction we call the cold decline. The cold decline is the strategic withdrawal of your free utility. It is not about becoming selfish, cruel, or unavailable to the people who truly matter. It is about reclaiming the right to choose when your energy is spent. Here is the field manual. Rule number 1. Stop using apology as a transaction fee. When you say sorry before every boundary, you frame your boundary as an offense. You have committed no crime by protecting your time. You do not need to apologize for having limits. Rule number 2. Master the delayed response. When a vague crisis drops into the group chat, do not touch your phone immediately. Let the room breathe. Let someone else think. Let someone else step up. Let the problem reveal whether it is truly yours or merely looking for the easiest host. You are not the sole savior of the universe. Rule number 3. Use clean operational language. When you are directly asked to take on something that is not yours to carry, do not invent a complex excuse. Excuses invite negotiation. A simple sentence carries more weight. Say, I do not have the bandwidth for that right now. Say, my weekend is already committed. Say, I cannot take that on. Or, if someone is trying to hand you a responsibility that belongs to them, say, I cannot take that on, but I trust you to handle it. Then stop. Do not add a story. Do not decorate the boundary with unnecessary explanations. Do not keep talking until your refusal sounds like a confession. Deliver the line and let it stand. You must learn to let other people sit in their own disappointment. If someone is upset because you will not do their work, carry their emotions, or rescue their poor planning, let them be upset. Their disappointment is not your emergency. Your value does not come from how much free labor you provide. It comes from how deliberately you choose where your energy goes. When you stop volunteering from fear, your presence becomes heavier. Your yes becomes more valuable because it is no longer automatic. You have now learned to survive the manipulation void. 2. You have learned to withdraw from the concession contract. You have learned to stop giving away your labor just to purchase temporary peace. But once people can no longer extract your time, they will often try to extract your reaction. And that is where the next trap begins. By now, you may feel a surge of confidence. You understand the manipulation void. You know how to hold silence without negotiating against yourself. You understand the concession contract. You know how to stop volunteering your time just to keep the room comfortable. And because of that, a dangerous thought may begin to form in your mind. You may start thinking that from this point forward, if anyone crosses your boundaries, you will fight back. You will clap back. You will put people in their place. You will aggressively defend your position so no one ever mistakes your restraint for weakness again. Stop right there. This is where the training becomes dangerous if you misunderstand it. If you carry that aggressive, hyper-defensive mindset into the real world, you will collapse faster than before. Because aggression is not the opposite of subservience. Very often, it is subservience wearing a louder mask. You have been conditioned by modern culture to believe that raising your voice, trading insults, or verbally destroying someone who disrespected you is a display of power. It is not. If someone can provoke you into losing emotional control, they did not lose the exchange. They found your handle. They now know exactly where to grab you. To understand this leak, we must examine the psychology of the ego under pressure. When your competence is questioned, your nervous system reacts quickly. A petty comment lands, your chest heats up, your jaw tightens, your mind begins preparing evidence. You want to explain, you want to correct the record, you want to prove that the accusation is false and that the other person has misjudged you. But notice what just happened. A cheap provocation successfully moved you out of command and into defense. You are no longer operating from your own center. You are orbiting around their judgment. When you lose your temper, or when you scramble to logically dismantle someone's insult, you show the room that they successfully hijacked your nervous system. You prove that they hold the remote control to your emotional thermostat. The diagnostic question is simple. When someone throws a petty provocation at you, are they actually attacking your capability, or are they checking to see if they can make you dance on command? This is the hidden mechanism we call the emotional contract. In human behavior, we only scramble to explain ourselves to entities we subconsciously treat as judges. We only defend ourselves frantically when we believe the other person's opinion has the authority to define us. By spending your energy trying to prove a provocateur wrong, you accidentally validate their disrespect. You treat their cheap insult as a formal accusation worthy of a full defense. You hand them the gavel, you crown them the judge, and you reduce yourself to a defendant begging for acquittal. That is the reactivity trap. The trap is not that someone insulted you. The trap is that you accepted the insult as a courtroom you were required to enter. This leak appears in 3 arenas. The first is the workplace. Picture a meeting where you are presenting a strategy you worked on for weeks. A peer leans back, smirks, and drops a passive-aggressive comment. They say the idea sounds good in theory, but it may be a little out of your depth. Instantly, the pain mirror reflects your insecurity. Heat hits your chest. Your ego takes the bait. You lean forward. You raise your voice slightly. You start listing your past wins. You explain your qualifications. You dissect why they are wrong. You think you are defending your honor. But look at the status cost. Anyone watching closely can see that the provocateur moved you. They stayed calm while you became intense. They remained seated in the frame while you scrambled to reclaim it. In that moment, you did not prove strength. You proved access. The second arena is digital life. You receive a snarky comment on a post or a passive-aggressive jab in a text thread. Your ego flares. You spend 20 minutes drafting the perfect response. Sharp, logical, devastating. You hit send and feel a momentary rush of satisfaction. You think you won. But the surgical truth is that someone just stole 20 minutes of your finite cognitive bandwidth from miles away. They extracted your time, your focus, and your nervous system without spending a dime. The comment was cheap. Your reaction was expensive. That is a terrible trade. The third arena is interpersonal life. During a disagreement, a partner, family member, or friend realizes they are losing the logical argument, so they pivot. They throw a low blow. They poke a known insecurity. They bring up something unrelated, but emotionally charged, just to see if it will land. You explode. You yell. You lose your baseline. And instantly, the frame changes. Now the conversation is no longer about their behavior. It is about your reaction. They look at you calmly and ask why you are acting so angry, so dramatic, so out of control. You lost the high ground because you gave them the one thing they needed, evidence that your emotions can be steered from the outside. Your correction is a framework we call detached data processing. When someone provokes you, do not treat their words as an arrow aimed at your soul. Treat them as raw behavioral data. Their comment may reveal insecurity. It may reveal an agenda. It may reveal a need for attention. It may reveal that they are testing whether you can be pulled off center, but it does not reveal your value. A petty insult tells you very little about who you are. It tells you much more about the person who needed to throw it. When you separate your ego from their words, the attack loses kinetic energy. It falls flat. It cannot enter you unless your pride opens the door. Here is the field manual for surviving the reactivity trap. Step 1. The mental pivot. The moment the insult lands and you feel the heat rise in your chest, silently label the behavior. Tell yourself, they are testing my baseline. This simple label moves you from emotional participant to clinical observer. You stop asking, how dare they say that? And start asking, what is this behavior revealing? That shift alone can save your frame. Step 2. The physical freeze. Use the freeze discipline from the first pillar. Do not frown. Do not smile. Do not sigh. Do not rush to fill the space. Let 3 seconds of silence pass. Let the comment sit in the room. Most provocations sound smaller when they are not immediately rewarded with a reaction. Silence exposes the cheapness of the attack. Step 3. The starvation script. You must respond in a way that gives them no conflict to feed on. Do not argue. Do not present evidence. Do not explain your worth to someone who has not earned jurisdiction over your life. Acknowledge the data and nothing more. Say, interesting. Say, noted. Say, that is one way to see it. Or say, I will keep that in mind. These lines are not surrender. They are containment. They deny the provocateur the emotional meal they were trying to extract from you. Step 4. The visual disconnect. After the starvation script, physically remove your attention. Look back at your notes. Turn back to your screen. Address the person next to them. Resume what you were doing. This matters. If you keep staring at them, you keep feeding the frame. If you keep explaining, you keep validating the courtroom. The cleanest signal of power is not a better insult. It is the visible withdrawal of access. The most devastating counterattack is not anger. It is demonstrating that their words are too light, too cheap, and too irrelevant to create even a single ripple on your emotional baseline. You strip them of power by refusing to sign the emotional contract. Never present evidence to a courtroom that lacks jurisdiction over your life. You have learned to hold the void. You have learned to refuse the concession. You have learned to starve provocation. But possessing these tools is not the same as surviving their use. The hardest part is not learning the strategy. It is surviving the pushback when the old system realizes you have changed. What does your life actually look like when the subservience reflex begins to die? You now possess the 3 pillars of the sovereign architecture. You know how to endure the manipulation void without negotiating against yourself. You know how to execute the cold decline without giving away your labor for temporary peace. And you know how to use detached data processing to neutralize emotional provocation without handing someone else the remote control to your nervous system. But possessing a strategy in theory is very different from surviving its implementation in reality. Do not imagine that the moment you start setting cleaner boundaries, the world will suddenly applaud your self-respect. It will not. At first, the reality is more psychologically intense. Because when you stop rewarding old behavior, the people who benefited from your old pattern may push harder before they adjust. This is the behavioral phenomenon known as the extinction burst. To understand it, picture a vending machine. A person puts in a coin, presses a button, and expects the machine to release the drink. But this time, nothing comes out. They do not immediately walk away with calm maturity. They press the button again, then harder. They shake the machine. They hit the glass. They try the same behavior with more force because, in the past, that behavior worked. Your subservience functioned the same way. For years, certain people around you pressed a button. A guilt trip, a manufactured silence, a vague emergency, a passive-aggressive comment, and you dispensed what they wanted: your time, your apology, your explanation, your emotional reaction. your willingness to absorb pressure so they would not have to. But when you deploy the sovereign architecture, the machine stops working. The old button no longer produces the old reward, so they may shake the glass. In the first few weeks, you may see this pattern appear in ordinary places. At work, you execute a cold decline on an unreasonable weekend request. You say, "I cannot take that on." You do not provide a long excuse. You do not apologize as if protecting your weekend is a moral failure. And suddenly, the temperature changes. A manager or colleague may become colder. They may imply that you are not being a team player. They may become subtly less cooperative. Not because you did something wrong, but because the old version of you was convenient. The version who answered quickly, stayed late, absorbed chaos, and asked for very little in return. That version was easy to use. The new version requires recalibration. The same pattern may appear in your personal life. You tell a family member that you will not take on a logistical responsibility this year. You tell a friend you are not available to drive, organize, pay, smooth over, or rescue. You tell a partner that you are willing to talk, but not willing to be punished with silence, guilt, or emotional chaos. At first, they may not respond with respect. They may label you. They may say you have changed. They may call you arrogant, difficult, selfish, cold, or distant. Understand what is happening. Many people do not describe your boundary accurately. They describe how your boundary makes them feel. If your old compliance made their life easier, your new self-respect may feel like an attack. This is where most people relapse. The pressure rises, and the old reflex returns. You feel the artificial guilt hit your nervous system like physical weight. You want to send one quick message to smooth things over. You want to over-explain so they understand you are not a bad person. You want to offer one small concession so the room feels warm again. But that is exactly how the old pattern survives. It does not need you to surrender completely. It only needs one little leak, one unnecessary apology, one extra paragraph, one rushed explanation, one emotional reaction. One moment where you teach the system that if it pressures you hard enough, the old version of you can still be extracted. Do not break. The discomfort you feel during this phase is not proof that you are doing something wrong. It is the friction of your new boundary hardening. You are not becoming cruel. You are becoming consistent. And consistency is what makes a boundary real. A boundary that collapses under guilt is not a boundary. It is a preference waiting for permission. A boundary that holds under pressure becomes part of your identity. This is how the sovereign architecture is built, not through speeches, not through declarations, not through announcing to the world that you are different now, through repeated, quiet, visible proof. It is crucial to understand this clearly. Not everyone who reacts poorly is your enemy. Some people are simply adjusting to a version of you that no longer overfunctions for them. Their discomfort may not be malicious, but it is still not yours to absorb. There is a difference between compassion and self-erasure. You can understand someone's disappointment without making yourself responsible for removing it. You can care about someone's feelings without surrendering your calendar, your energy, your nervous system, or your dignity. Maturity is not the ability to make everyone comfortable. Maturity is the ability to remain steady while other people process discomfort that belongs to them. Your objective during the extinction burst is simple. Hold the baseline. That is all. Do not escalate. Do not explain the philosophy. Do not try to convince everyone that your new behavior is justified. The more you argue for your boundary, the more you imply that your boundary requires approval. It does not. Rule number 1 is the rule of no announcements. Do not sit people down and declare that you are setting boundaries now. Do not give a speech about your new standards. Do not perform your transformation for public recognition. Announcing power is often another disguised request for validation. Let behavior speak. Let your calm refusal speak. Let your clean no speak. Let your silence speak. Rule number 2 is the rule of emotional containment. When they shake the glass, do not shake back. If someone becomes passive-aggressive, observe it. If someone tries guilt, observe it. If someone labels you, Observe it. Their escalation is data. It tells you exactly where the old access point used to be. Your job is not to punish them for reacting. Your job is not to collapse because they reacted. Your job is to stay intact. Calm voice, clean sentence, no apology tax, no frantic evidence, no emotional courtroom. You are not there to win a debate about your right to have limits. You are there to demonstrate that your limits exist. Rule number 3 is the rule of repetition. Your first boundary may shock them. Your second boundary may irritate them. Your third boundary teaches them. People recalibrate through repeated exposure to the same baseline. If you say no cleanly once and then collapse the next time, you teach inconsistency. If you hold the line repeatedly without anger, without drama, and without excessive explanation, the old pattern weakens. It may disappear, it may reduce, or it may reveal exactly who refuses to respect the new terms. Either outcome gives you clarity. Some relationships will mature. Some will become more respectful. Some will expose that they were built almost entirely on your willingness to abandon yourself. When the people around you realize that guilt, silence, pressure, and provocation no longer extract the old rewards from you, something shifts. The system loses fuel. The behavior that once controlled you begins to weaken because it no longer receives payment. And internally, you undergo a profound identity upgrade. You stop moving through the world as a person constantly bending to fit inside other people's expectations. You become the fixed point. You stand still, and the room must adjust its temperature around your presence. That does not mean everyone will like you. That does not mean every relationship will survive unchanged. It means the relationships that remain will be forced to meet a real version of you, not the discounted version that existed only to keep the peace. Erasing the subservience reflex is not about adopting a dark persona. It is not about acting like a villain. It is not about becoming cold for the sake of looking powerful. It is about finally becoming real. Real kindness, real generosity, real patience, real loyalty. Not automatic compliance. Not fear disguised as virtue. Not exhaustion dressed up as reliability. When your yes is no longer automatic, it becomes meaningful. When your no longer collapses under pressure, it becomes respected. And when your presence is no longer offered at a discount, the world is forced to treat it as something with weight. Many people hesitate to build the sovereign architecture because they are afraid of losing their identity as a good person. They were taught that kindness means endless availability. They were taught that love means constant accommodation. They were taught that being reliable means absorbing pressure quietly until everyone else feels comfortable again. So when they imagine becoming less available, less apologetic, and less reactive, they fear they are becoming cold, cruel, selfish, unlovable. Let us permanently invert that false belief. By destroying the subservience reflex, you did not kill the good person inside you. You finally built a fortress to protect them. A good person with no boundaries is not truly kind. They are defenseless. Their generosity has no weight because they lack the capacity to withhold it. Their yes means very little because it is not always chosen. Sometimes it is extracted. Sometimes it is pressured out of them. Sometimes it is fear wearing the costume of virtue. True kindness can only come from choice, not fear. When you can say no, your yes becomes honest. When you can walk away, your presence becomes meaningful. When you can tolerate disappointment, silence, and tension without collapsing, your generosity stops being a survival strategy and becomes an act of power. This is the untouchable baseline, not aggression, not arrogance, not emotional distance. The untouchable baseline is the point inside you that no longer trades self-respect for temporary comfort. Your final command is simple. Tomorrow, the test will come. It may come as silence after you set a boundary. Hold your position. Let the silence do its work. It may come as a vague request that no one assigned to you. Do not volunteer just to erase the tension. Let the room find its own solution. It may come as a thinly veiled insult designed to bait your ego. Do not defend yourself to a courtroom that has no jurisdiction over your life. See the behavior, process the data, withdraw access, return to your center. Do not announce the new version of yourself. Demonstrate it. Do not explain the baseline. Hold it. Do not beg people to understand your boundary. Let them meet it. It is time to make the internal commitment permanent. Write one sentence in the comments. My presence is no longer discounted. Do not write it for the algorithm. Write it for your own nervous system. Write it as the first active law of your new architecture. If this strategic briefing recalibrated the way you see your time, your energy, and your boundaries, subscribe to Leverage Doctrine and turn on notifications. The next layer of psychological defense is already being prepared. Remember this: your presence is a privilege. Stop pricing it at a discount.